The Journals of Oliver Abdali. I first found the journals when I was 10 years old. At the time I thought they were just stories, but now that I'm older I know that they're only detailed accounts of the life of Oliver Abdali. And while he was not known to many, in these journals bound in leather his life is laid out for all who wish to view it. I don't know if he and I are related, and I'm too afraid to speak his name to any but the paper before me. For after reading the slightly slanted words he left behind, I know the story of his life. I know he wrote with his left hand, that he had brown eyes so dark they were nearly black. I know he loved the taste and crunch of almonds. I know he longed for the feel of cooled water against his skin. And I know he wanted a new life somewhere in Scandinavia, a place he had only ever heard stories. Oliver was half Afghan, half British. He was raised by his father in Afghanistan. His mother died in childbirth, and all he knew of her were stories passed on down to him. He had a big brother too, although they did not get along. Only once did Oliver ever put his brother's name into writing. "Abdul and I fought today," he wrote in the messy handwriting of a child. After that he described a bloody fist fight between him and his brother in a park near their home. He discussed with the pencil how his brother had lost a tooth in the fight, and how Oliver had been ashamed as he limped home to his father. He gave extra detail to the other children that had chanted while brother fought brother. While his English was never perfect and his handwriting was atrocious, he was observant. Little details always found their way into his journals, especially in the one he wrote as a child. There are 3 journals, each written in a small book and stowed away in a tiny wooden box. But the one I always find my way back to is his last journal. It's here where he described fighting in a war he did not wish to fight. He described the vivid and gut-wrenching screams of children, the way he saw women left sobbing on the street as their veils were ripped from their heads and faces. And it was in this journal where he described being forced to shoot innocent and unarmed soldiers. One of his final entries details how he was walking down the street with a rifle in his hands that he did not wish to carry, when he saw a little girl. The girl had matted hair and a face smeared with dust and something that might have been blood. Oliver had set his gun on the ground and reached out his calloused hand towards the girl. He'd only planned to offer her food that he had stashed in his pocket. But she'd screamed in terror and run down an alleyway. She'd been afraid of a man who only wanted to help her. She was scared by the pattern on my clothes and the gun on the ground, he wrote. And in his very final entry, dated March 14th, 2015, Oliver states that he plans to run away from the army that dragged him from his home and forced him to fire at soldiers he did not believe were his enemies. I do not know if he survived. All I know is that 5 years later I found his journals, stashed in a box underneath a hotel room bed. And now you know at least part of the story of a man who was as good underneath a horrible mask that had been glued to his face.
Please hang up and try again.